Hello and welcome to another episode of Transformational Blueprints, where we try to put a dent in the large number of transformation programs that fail. Hosted by me, Mario Michaels, founder and director of Synaxia Group. On this series, we will bring you unique insights drawn from first-hand experience from some of the most high-profile architecture and transformation leaders across the globe. Topics told in order to share knowledge, experiences and ideas to inspire, innovate and give back to the architecture community. So grab a coffee, sit back and relax. Welcome everybody to today's podcast. Today we're going to be talking to Rebecca Hosgood about architecture with a change mindset. For those of you who don't know Rebecca, she's an experienced strategic, operational and commercial leader with experience in driving business change and transformation through a clear strategic vision, technical understanding, and a ruthless priority for first-class customer and colleague experience. She's knowledgeable, versatile, digital and technology leader with over a decade of experience specifically in retail. And today she heads up Currys technology strategy and architecture team, reporting directly to the CTO. For those of you who don't know, but Currys UK and I consists of Currys UK and I, Currys Business, ID Mobile and Carphone Warehouse. Rebecca's team today consists of technology strategists, enterprise architects, and more recently expanded to include the platform ownership for Salesforce and Currys' own in-house repair system. Rebecca is responsible for the definition of Currys' group technology strategy, architectural roadmap, and execution through the transformational roadmap. Previous to this role, Rebecca had a number of different roles at Currys, but has more recently established the technology and transform business partnership team and has led Currys UK and I digital delivery teams working on the website, in-store assisted selling tools, and the mobile app, as well as setting up their agile portfolio office. I'm sure you'll get this from the episode, but Rebecca's passionate about coaching, mentoring. She acknowledges much of her success was built on some fantastic mentors and coaches she has had along the way, and so is keen to give back to others as well. So welcome, Rebecca.
Hello, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So we always tend to start every episode with what you believe makes a great architect in today's world.
Oh, yeah, and thank you for having me, Mary. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. It's a good question to start. So I think for me, there's a couple of key bits, and actually having listened to your podcast, some of them have already been mentioned, which means I'm not too far off the beaten track. But I think for me, it's around really being interested and passionate about learning. And inquisitive, and being able to listen to those answers and digest them and take away the information and then use that in whatever you're doing. So I think that's really important for me. The other thing is getting on with people and being able to communicate. I know it sounds really, really basic, but a lot of what me and my team do is working with people from all over the business and the technology teams, understanding their problems and challenges, being able to relate to them. So being able to build those relationships, gain that trust, and then actually being able to then sort of tell that story back to the business when you're making a recommendation. So that element of storytelling, I think, is important as well. Yeah. And then finally, I've sort of a bit about, I guess, pragmatism and ambiguity. So I guess within retail, specifically, because that's where I spent most of my career, we're sort of a low margin retailer, and therefore we really have to be quite sensible with the recommendations we put forward, so they work for Currys as a business, and also being able to deal with that ambiguity. So a lot of what we do as a team is problem solving, so you don't have all the answers, so feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable, really, and being able to put structure around some of those problems. So I think you have to be quite a varied and have lots of skills in your tool belt. So that's why I think it's such an exciting role and sort of function and area and career to go into, really.
And that's what's kept me recruiting in this market for so long, is because it is, and I've done a post on LinkedIn about how nuanced it is. You know, no two enterprise architect roles are the same. The industries are different, the people you're working with are different, the challenges are different. And yeah, you could argue that's the same with most roles in any sort of commercial business. Of course you can, but I know with architecture, it's a little bit, everything you said there about what makes a good architect, you never see on a job description or a job advert. It's amazing. Or you might see excellent communication skills, but everybody thinks they've got excellent communication skills.
Yeah.
So it's really how do you assess that? How do you develop that and so on? So one of the key challenges for most businesses, I suppose. So I've been really looking forward to this episode, mainly because of your background is not that of a traditional, what we see a traditional head of architect or chief architect. Could you share a little bit about, and I've touched on it, but could you share a little bit about your journey, how you got to where you are now, and what were some of the key roles that sort of shaped, key roles and projects, I suppose, that shaped your sort of career path?
Yeah, of course. So as you said at the beginning, I've spent most of my career at Currys, which has been absolutely fantastic. And I'm super lucky that over the last 10 plus years, the company's evolved through mergers and acquisitions. And therefore, it feels like I've worked at sort of 3 or 4 different businesses, which means it's kept it really fresh and exciting, which is great. I think to start, I guess, where my career started, so I actually started in online marketing, working in affiliates, which was all around partnerships and driving traffic and to the website. But actually, that gave me a really strong foundation in what retail is, the trading of a business, understanding sort of the basics of price, range, availability, why we're actually here. And I think that's what's actually anchored a lot of my career. It's having that commercial acumen and that understanding that almost, I constantly say this to my team, but whatever job you're in within Currys, we're here to sell products and give customers the best experience. So for me, that's been great. So I did that for a couple of years, and as much as I loved it and it was great, it's also a little more repetitive because you have so many Christmases or so many Easters, and you really are focused around those key trading periods, which is great. So I had a passion for sort of change and doing different things, and so that's where I moved into project and program management, and I really had a passion for it, getting stuff done, driving results, speaking to lots of people across the business, learning. And I really saw the value in project management is being able to understand that full holistic picture and actually spot the gaps and the misses, because I was one of the people that had the end to end. And so sort of when you'd spot something that a ball was maybe going to drop, or you'd missed a requirement, you'd be like, yes, and you'd feel like you'd added value as the project manager. So I sort of did a lot of different projects and programs. So from payments and our new credit proposition, your plan, through to implementing our mobile app, to scoping out our big new Salesforce re-implementation that we went live with about 3 or 4 years ago. So lots of different things in that space, which I think gave me a greater understanding of all the different areas across the business. And then it moved into more partnering. So I actually, when I left the e-commerce team, so I was lucky that team, when I did project and program delivery, was actually in function. So I stayed very close to a P&L. I worked with the e-com director. And so again, I was still in the trading cycle, understanding what projects we delivered, how it impacted the bottom line when a project was late, the impact it had. And you saw then in the numbers you were missing, or you were overachieving because it went live early. Let's be optimistic. So it was really good, and that definitely gave me a foundation of actually it's around the value you create from your project. It doesn't matter if it does matter, but on time and to budget, but actually it's about the value creation. And so then actually my team, I moved into technology, and I took up a partnership and innovation role, which was a bit more strategic and working with our sort of C-suite on their understanding their business strategies and helping to evolve their transformation and technology roadmaps and scoping out some of our big programs, as I mentioned, like our new website when we moved to Salesforce. And then more recently transitioned into head of technology strategy and architecture. So quite a varied and different background to probably many, but I think that the breadth of experience and skills and exposure has really allowed me to pick up lots of different skills that I now look back and go, oh, that's really relatable to what I do now. But if you had asked me 5 years ago if I'd have been doing this job, I probably would have said no. But that's also because I think the role has changed a lot more recently.
It massively has, and clearly you get the sense from how you talk. You've got massive passion for being customer centric and working backwards from there, which is great. And I can imagine that stands you in good stead for your current role. But could you elaborate how this approach has driven your work and success within architecture so far? I appreciate it's sort of the role's very much in its infancy for you, but be good to just hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I guess as a team, we focus very much on understanding the problems that we're looking to address. So as you mentioned, my team is more enterprise architecture, tech strategy, and the solution architects and technical architects sit within more of our engineering function. So we work closely with them as an architecture community, and we have the same governance and forums and things like that. But I look more at the more future and the strategic element. And so a lot of what we're doing is being, before we start a piece of work, at looking at which direction we want to go in or how we're going to solve a problem. It's really looking at what are those pain points, what is the problem statement, and then from there being able to be clear on our objectives and the goals and what we're actually setting out to achieve and how that aligns to our strategy and our big four priorities. And I very much feel if you have that sort of outset at the beginning, you've got that structure, then whatever route you go down when you're then looking at vendors and solutions, and you've got those things to anchor you back and those North Star. And that's what kind of keeps you on the straight and narrow, because we need to remember as a team, as I mentioned, like that we're all here to, I guess, drive that value and make that impact to our customers. And so really that approach is something we take, whether we're doing options papers or looking at scoping stuff or doing big strategy pieces, because I find it really gives the team something tangible to understand. And then also it makes it clear when we're playing back what we're doing to our CEO or CFO or a business leader, we're talking about things in really clear, simple, customer first, colleague first language. And so they understand it. And therefore they get it, and then they can make an informed decision on whether we choose to invest or something or not.
Absolutely. And everyone can relate to it, as you say. It's like tangible. It's like numbers. Everyone knows numbers, and right the way for whatever level, whatever department. That makes absolute sense. You've mentioned being ambitious, and you can clearly see that you like to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, mainly from the variety of roles that you've had, and you've not really taken a linear approach or traditional linear career path. How has that mindset of, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone helped you grow in your career? And could you share any instances where stepping out of your comfort zone has led to significant achievements?
Yeah, so I guess we're focused on, very much as I've mentioned, on business goals. And I'm lucky enough that I've got a really fantastic team under me. So I've got a team of brilliant architects that have got an awful lot of technical knowledge. And it's my job as you become a leader to actually recruit people that can do the job that work for you. And so some of that is knowing where your skills are and what you're good at and what you're not so good at, and making sure you've got a team under you that's absolutely fantastic that can do those skills and you can get the most out of it. So for me, that is a really big focus as I progress and build up really, hopefully, high performing teams. So I think for me, it's always been about sort of not being pigeonholed by the role I've taken on. And I've always liked to sort of stretch, or if someone's been off ill or on holiday, I've always been happy to get my hands dirty. And I think some of the biggest sort of things, especially early on in my career, was when we had a go live and we knew we weren't going to be able to do a couple of things to get something live, and in order to get that live on the date it needed to before Christmas, for example, which is our biggest trading period, we would have to go to our chief information officer to get him to approve a risk. And I guess that was as a junior project manager having to go to him and say, I need you to approve this. And definitely moments like that were uncomfortable. But I think if you were sort of clear and concise with what you were saying, why you were saying it, your plan of, you only needed him to approve something for a couple of weeks before a fix went in, and the rationale, people understand that.
Hmm.
and they received awards. But I think the other thing for me is you've got to remember people are just people. So wherever they are in their career,
Yeah.
they are just people, and we're all the same, and we're all human.
Yeah.
And if you go to someone, I guess, with compassion or clear facts or numbers or rationale, then they're going to respond well to it. So I think there's examples like that. I think there's also examples where I'm not hugely technical, but I'm very interested in technical elements and
Yep.
integration and how things work and hang together. And so I've definitely had experience in projects where we're in the final phases of testing and I have to go into integration platforms and be pushing messages in
Yeah.
testing so that the UAT testers could carry on testing so we could hit
Yeah.
a milestone. So for me, it's always just been about, even if I don't know how to do something, it's learning how to do it, asking for help,
Yeah.
and then just sort of giving it a go. Because
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you're not, the impact of you getting something wrong is small, especially in those environments, and
Yeah.
therefore actually the value you can create by giving it a go is so much better. And I'm lucky enough that Currys is an environment where they sort of, I guess, help you on that. That's accepted. You're
Yeah.
protected if you are vulnerable or you give something a go and you don't succeed, it's received in the right way.
I suppose if you've got the mindset of we've all got the same common objective, and that's to serve the business and to serve its customers internally and externally, no matter what you go and ask for, that person on the receiving end has to understand that we've got a common goal. So if I'm completely wrong and I'm asking you for something, then fine, tell me, give me that feedback as to why you believe I'm wrong, and we can have a discussion about it rather than being really scared because you're walking into someone's glass corner office, overlooking a river or something like that, and they're really important for them to have that office. It's no, that what you're trying to achieve is helping them be better at their job as well and look better in their job. You've done a variety of different roles, and I don't know if this is purposeful or not, but for somebody who's maybe either looking to become a future head of architecture or never really considered that career path, what advice or what strategies have you, again, willingly or unwillingly done or accidentally done over your career to get you into this position that you are now? Because you said you didn't even consider architecture as a career, but here you are. So that's
Yeah.
a great example of, I firmly believe if we're going to improve diversity in architecture, and it's got one of the worst statistics within technology other than business architecture around not just sort of gender but ethnicity, diversity, and all sort of different metrics. It's really really poor, to be honest. And you're a fantastic example of, a female architecture leader. I think it'd be really beneficial for you to talk about things that you've done along the way that maybe somebody who's, 23, 24, starting their career, start thinking about now.
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of things really. So I guess, as I've sort of mentioned already, asking questions,
Yep.
learning from everyone. I've very much taken the view that I don't know everything. And actually, I think being a project manager, most of your job is getting other people to do things for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore realizing the value everyone else brings, which is quite humbling.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
learning from all of those people
Yep.
about how test environments work,
Yep.
learning about the business requirements and the business case and how you create the business cases and all that sort of
Mhm.
stuff. So I think that has been really important. And I think what that does is that gives you exposure to lots of different things. And then it allows you to work out what you like,
Yep.
what you're good at, what you're
Hmm.
not so good at. And it allows you to also then reflect on your previous roles and work out, right, from my next job, what would I like to do, and what things does that role need to have to make
Yep.
it enjoyable. You can't always do everything you love to do and you're
No.
great at all the
Yeah.
time. There is definitely some elements of your job which you're going to like less, but getting that balance right so you feel
Hmm.
motivated and engaged is really important. And I think that has probably, I've always followed what I've enjoyed doing and felt I've
Yep.
added value, and I think that's what sort of then taking me on the path. I think the other thing which I've always been quite intentional about is having a 5-year career plan and having
Yep.
clear objectives. Now, some people are very sort of feel uncomfortable with those sorts of things, but I think if you, rather than seeing them as a thing you do because a company asks you to do them,
Yeah.
You see them as something that is actually about, no, this is me investing in
Yeah.
myself. It's about carving out time and thinking about what you want to do next and thinking about the skills you want to gain. So the one thing I've always done is not focus on role. I want this next
Yeah.
job or this role. It's about focusing on the skills I want to gain. And actually a mentor once, very good mentor of mine once told me that. He was sort of saying, oh, I want to move into this role. And in order to do this role, I need to be able to manage a P&L.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move into this role, so I manage a P&L. So I've always taken that on. So thinking about, if I think in some point in the future, I want to be, let's say, a CDO, CIO type role, these are the skills I need to be able to get: budget management, stakeholder management, influencing others in order to get there, and being clear on these are the skills I've already gained and these are my gaps, and therefore these are the type of roles that will help me plug those gaps. Because then actually you're not gunning for a specific role, you're gunning for some types of roles that could be right for you to help you gain those skills. And I think that's where I sort of fell moved into this role, because I really wanted to get closer to the technology strategy.
Okay.
And actually work on a leadership team that was alongside operations, so I could improve my understanding of the operation side of the technology business. So they're two things that this was a massive tick in the box for me for this role. And then the other thing is tell people. So when you know what sort of thing you want to do, is actually tell people what you want to do. Especially if you want to move internally, because what you'll find is there might not be a role today or tomorrow, but there might be one in 3-6 months, or the thinking about a special project or a program, and then you're front of mind. And so that's probably my single biggest bit of advice: tell people what you want to do, and then also surround yourself with fab people. Sorry, I'm going on now, Mario.
No,
but I'm very passionate about, I feel and I guess this is quite a good segue, coaches and mentors. As you said in the introduction, I've had some fantastic coaches and mentors over my time for different periods of time, different levels, and I've always sort of picked something up from them new with different perspectives. And that's really, really helped me shape my thinking and how I approach things differently. And so that's something I'm really passionate about, giving back to others.
I understand if you're looking for a mentor, you can approach somebody who you think, right, okay, they've got a skill set that I need or want, or they're doing a job that I'd like to do in the future. Have you ever, and would you encourage it to be the other way around? So say, you're in a position of leadership now, you're in a position of authority and great responsibility. Would you maybe seek out someone to say, right, I've seen great potential in you, maybe not necessarily in your team, maybe in a completely different department. I see great potential in you. You're showing some really good skills for a future architect. How would you feel about, doing some mentoring sessions? Is that a strategy that you've either come across or would encourage?
I haven't massively come across it, and I think it raises a really good question: why not? I've definitely had that I've asked sort of people, would you mind having those types of conversations with me, more of that sort of upward mentorship. I think the one thing for me that has to work when you're talking about mentors and that sort of pairing is you need to have one person that's sort of driving the sort of the relationship and wanting to get something out of it. So I think it would be fine for me to go and ask someone, oh, could you mentor me downwards, upwards, if you know what I mean. And it'd be good for me to ask someone to sort of me to be the mentee. But I wouldn't want to too much impose my mentorship or coaching onto someone else, because they have to be in the right mindset in order to do it. I've offered, so we have a really good IT grad program, and actually in the past we've had general grad programs, and the graduates at Currys are absolutely fantastic. And so quite often they come and work in your team for 6 months, you build a good rapport, and then we definitely have those conversations, and I've offered it up. And some people have said yes, and some people haven't, and I think either way is absolutely fine. But it is really important when you have that mentor-mentee relationship, whoever the sort of mentee is, that they are driving and making sure that they're getting what they want out of the conversation. Otherwise, sometimes the relationships can sort of feel dud and you're not getting it. So I do think that is important.
That makes sense. And I've seen that happen in the past. What is it about architecture that interests you, Rebecca?
I think it's the variety. So as
Yeah.
you can probably tell, I've always loved variety in my
Yeah.
CV, and I've always loved learning. But it is that sort of being able to see that big picture of your tech landscape, being able to look for opportunities or do a piece of work to solve a problem. And you're not only thinking about that problem in that specific area, you're then potentially thinking about the downstream impacts or the upstream impacts. And so I love the fact you have that holistic full view and that
Yeah.
you can spot those patterns. And then I love the fact that you really do have an opportunity to make a difference to your customers
Yeah.
in what you're building, what you're designing. And again, not just necessarily for a singular thing, but having that sort of halo effect of customer benefit,
Yeah.
depending on how you build those solutions. So that could be, I could implement a new proposition over here, but actually I'm doing something in a finance system,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is then streamlining a process or removing defects. And so actually then you're not only benefiting the customer for the proposition, but colleagues are great because there's less
Yep.
production incidents they're having to deal with, or whatever it may be. And so really looking at holistic end to end, I think, is the bit that sort of excites me and
Yeah.
makes us go, as a team we can have a real impact. And for me it is all about sort of driving results and feeling
Yeah.
like we're making progress.
Yeah, and I suppose, how do you ensure that those architectural decisions that you and the team do are pragmatic, they focus on delivering business value, and I suppose, can you sort of discuss how you decide which areas to transform, optimize, or tolerate? Because you can't, there's not a bottomless pit of money and time and resource to just go after everything. And retail in particular is forever evolving, and technology is evolving as well. So you could quite easily waste a lot of money. So how do you sort of balance those decisions?
Yeah, and it's a really good point. And I think a lot of people that are listening, if they work in retailers or other businesses that have been around for years and years, Currys is over 100 years old. When you look
Yeah.
at, you have a wealth of technology
Hmm.
with across your estate, and there is a number of aging and older systems. And I
Yeah.
think you have to be able to understand your tech estate. So
Yeah.
we look at all of our applications, we look at their risk profile
Yeah.
basically, which is a holistic risk profile, looking at how they're doing from an operation perspective, compliance, data, and also like business transformation, the ability
Yep.
to adapt and evolve to meet the changing needs of the business and speed to market and things like that. So having that holistic picture of what your technology landscape looks today and how it's working is really important to be able to make
Yeah.
informed decisions. What I think makes it super valuable though is actually being able to understand your business capability map. And when I say that, it's about being able to understand the core components of business capability, sort of what they do across your business end to end, and then being able to understand how those capabilities map to your tech landscape.
Yep.
So then you can be looking at, right, from a business perspective, does this capability, I don't know, selling a product,
Yep.
serve my business? Does it do what it needs to do? Is the business happy with it? Does it deliver on their strategy? Can they change it as they fast to? And then you can understand, is it meeting its purpose? You can map it to the technology and say, actually, well, also from a technology perspective, we've got an aging system here or whatever it might be, and
Hmm.
or it's old, but actually it's really robust and we don't need
Yep.
to change it, so we're not going to invest there. Or this is somewhere that's a real strategic capability, it's a differentiator, and therefore we really need to be moving fast, and the technology is slow and difficult to change. Right, now we've got a case for change. That's
Yep.
where we should be focusing our investment, because it's not only a one-sided view of, oh, the technology is aging or maybe risky. It's actually the business needs to do something here.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about being really intentional about where you invest your decisions so that you can, as a business, you're it's a combined decision. Long are the days where a CIO used to ask for 10 million quid to
Yeah.
upgrade a
Yeah.
system and get a blank check.
Yeah.
We have to be proving and talking to every decision we make and being able to explain why. And a lot of the older systems, you can keep them going, you can
Yeah.
make them safe,
Yeah.
they can be stable and robust. And so really it has to be that sort of handshake between the technology view and then really that business appetite and why we need to make a difference. And that's how we focus our investment, really, as well as
Yeah.
looking to drive the top line growth.
And I suppose that sort of leads me quite nicely into sort of my next point. Architecture has evolved over the years. You know, I've done it for a while now, and there's been this cyclical thing of, yeah, we really value enterprise architecture. Oh no, actually, we think enterprise architecture now is a bunch of people sat in their ivory tower dictating what's going on. Actually, no, we're now going into the third sort of series of enterprise architecture where, you know, there's actually value in it. We've realized actually over the past 6, 7 years, you know, we've been slating enterprise architects and we've now realized what the value is. How do you, as a new architecture leader, how have you ensured that that ivory tower stigma is no longer there within enterprise architecture in Currys? And were there any sort of key drivers? Has it been an evolution for you, I suppose, at Currys? And what were the key drivers that you set out? Because again, that is a soft skill kind of thing, or soft stigma that it's what people are saying rather than it being truly visible.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from the role of the enterprise architect, I guess, and what people are doing on the ground. So a lot of people that are enterprise architects have come from that more solution technical background, which is
Yep.
fab. And it means they can do it. So they could be a solution architect, they
Yeah.
could do design. And what I have found is that it's really easy then when the business is focused on project and program delivery and really driving for results, is that your team, unless you protect them and go, no, we are going to focus on the strategy and what's
Yeah.
coming 2+ years, they get sucked into the projects and the programs because they've got the experience, they've got the knowledge, they know the business. People want them involved because they know they're going to do a job, which is fantastic for the team. But the big thing for me has been really focusing the team and almost showing them that actually if you can be having these conversations about the strategy, so it might be the future of your in-store point of sale or your order management capability, and actually we're having those conversations a couple of years out, that you then start to know what we want. So this is our future order management system, and actually you can start sharing with the business, and then you start influencing the projects that are happening in that space or touching that capability, and then impacting and influencing into the 3-year plan and the stuff that's coming future, and building into those business cases. Because a lot of what the team do, it's not just about saying, oh, it's this system, it's saying, oh, this is the benefit it can drive, this is the upsides. And so for me, it's all about having that proactive conversation. Now obviously there's a balance. You don't want to be looking necessarily too far into the future, because so much can change from a technology perspective, even in a year. And we've seen that obviously with Gen AI in the last couple of years. But having that view and that guiding North Star of where we want to go, how we're going to get there, and go into the business and say, actually, we think we've got this opportunity for you because of XYZ. That's where, for me, I think we've started seeing a shift, and people sort of seeing the value that the team can bring over the last 12 months.
Okay. And I suppose on that, I know you're sort of really passionate about sort of diversity within technology, and you're a fantastic example of how somebody from a diverse background can really impact change. How do you ensure diversity of thoughts and opinions within your team, regardless of background? And why do you think this diversity is absolutely crucial in technology?
Yeah, so I think it's important in all functions, I guess, in industries. But I believe it's specifically important, I guess, to sort of retailers, I guess, is because our customers are from a diverse background, ethnicity, gender. And so to be able to really understand your customers, their problems, be empathetic towards their needs, why they need a laptop, why they need a washing machine, it really helps to have a sort of a diverse team. Because then when you're having conversations as a team about a problem or a solution or a recommendation, you're challenging that thinking with all of those viewpoints. And I truly believe then that allows you to put your best foot forward when you're making a recommendation. And so it's about all of those things, but it's also about differing opinions, I think, and personality types as well. So things like your appetite to risk and how averse you are to it, and making sure you've got different people in the team with different experiences and perspectives on that. it really just helps to have that holistic end-to-end conversation and
Hmm.
try and be a more inclusive environment.
Yeah.
The one thing we do as a team, and I'm very lucky I have got a diverse team, and some of
Yeah.
that's been intentional, but also I've inherited a
Yeah.
diverse team, and it's something we do look at. But it allows us to have those open and honest conversation. And my real view is that whenever I have those conversations, I'm not always going to get it right.
Yep.
And I quite often preface things with
Yeah.
that. I have my own, everyone has their own natural biases that you need to be
Yeah.
aware of in order to have a really good conversation. But my position is I prefer to have the conversation, hear what people think in a
Yeah.
safe, honest, safe space, so that we can all better ourselves, because
Yeah.
I truly believe it's around education and in informing you. And if you understand more about that person and where they're coming from and why, then you can be more empathetic. And I think at
Yeah.
its simplest, it is, for me, it is all about sort of empathy and understanding.
Okay. And you mentioned you've got a diverse team, some of it inherited, some of it is intentional. How did you go about creating that diversity? Were there any sort of examples of, again, I use the word strategy, but things that you've put in place to ensure that you do have a diverse team, whether it's attraction or retention?
Yeah, so I think a number of things. We're really lucky at Currys is that we've, over the last couple of years specifically, we've really organically built up some networks across the
Yeah.
business. So we've got a really strong women's network, Embrace, which is all around diversity, pride, things like that. So I think having those networks to really showcase the conversation,
Yep.
bringing external speakers is good. And I think actually encouraging the team and me being part of those networks, more
Hmm.
so some than
Yeah.
others, but it helps sort of, again, promote that conversation. So I think that's something we really try and do as a team. The other bit for me, I guess in some ways me joining the team has
Yep.
been good. I've had a number of people come up to me and sort of say, "Oh, I'm interested in this. Your background was different. Would you
Yeah.
consider this conversation?" And I think just sort of, I guess, leading from the front, trying to set a good example, being brave, I guess,
Yeah.
and vulnerable that you might not get things right, but you're going to give it a good go, and you're aware there are skills you can bring to a role, I think is really important. So that's really good. And then I guess things like, just when we're recruiting, trying to have a better mix of candidates and things like that. But obviously, ultimately, you do still need the right person for the
For
job.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so it really is a balance between, I know I would never want to be hired for a role just to meet a statistic or a target,
Yeah.
because
Agreed.
it wouldn't sit right. I want to be there on merit.
Yeah.
And I want to feel
Absolutely.
I've got that
Yeah.
job. And so I think you also need to keep that with your candidates, that you are putting the best foot forward. But would I look at someone with a different background or CV or experience and go, "Oh, but they've got lots of transferable skills. Yeah, great. Let's meet them for a
Yeah.
coffee and have a catch." And I think having, as I said, those people around the table with those diverse opinions, the conversations you then watch your team have are truly enjoyable.
Yeah. You can just sit back
Um,
and watch them, can't you?
it's yeah,
Yeah.
it is really, and I learn things constantly
Yeah.
from them and them challenging their thinking, and it really is, it's quite exciting and a great place to work.
You become more of a facilitator in those meetings rather than a dictator, don't you? I was at a IT leadership conference last week in Munich, and I was speaking to a head of enterprise architecture for a global business, and we'll all know the brand, but I won't mention who it is. Very similar situation. He was looking for a lead enterprise architect to manage five enterprise architects. And he thought, right, I'm going to completely challenge the status quo here. I could easily promote one of these five, um, but I don't want to do that because we're just going to end up with the same results over and over again. Equally, I know I could probably lose someone if I don't make that internal promotion. So he went out and he found someone from within the business who was the head of customer success. Similar background
Yeah.
to yourself, I suppose, Rebecca. And he said, I just focused on the soft skills because I had enough technical knowledge in that enterprise architecture team to develop an EA strategy. They knew all
Yeah.
the tools, they knew the business inside out, etc., etc. What we didn't know the customer. And what I needed as a leader was somebody who's really empathetic. And he listed 10 soft skills, and he thought, I met this lady and she was absolutely fantastic. She blew everybody out of the water. So I suppose it's flipping that thought process of I need an enterprise architect leader. preferably going to come from an enterprise architecture background because they need to know enterprise architecture. And actually, he thought they don't need to know enterprise architecture. They can probably learn that along the way. What I can't teach them is how to manage my expectations, how to go out to the wider business, how to go and speak to customers, how to put together a business strategy with the help of EAs. And she's been in situ for, well, beginning of the year. And he said in his 20-year career, it's been the best hire he's made.
Really, that's lovely to hear.
It was amazing. It blew me away because when he started talking about how he'd hired someone in this massive role from no architecture background whatsoever, I was kind of intrigued, but also thinking, why would anybody do that? You're putting your job and career on the line. But I suppose, high risk, high reward.
Yeah. I think what I was just going to say, the one thing that's interesting is I think it's fantastic when you see those moves, but I also think that sort of showcases that also then for the people that in your team that are thinking about progression and what their next role is and how do I move up, that people getting roles now, it's no longer just about your skills and can you do the job. It's about, are you the right fit for that role at the right time in that business to do what the objectives they want you to do. And so the only thing I would say on that is that people that I guess are looking to move into head of architecture or chief architecture role is just, if an opportunity doesn't happen, it's probably not because you're not ready for it or you're not right for it. It wasn't the right time and the right role for you or what that person was looking for. But that doesn't mean anything against your skills and experience. And so I think that's the one as we go through this transition, because you are constantly faced, you recruit internally, externally, what's the mix of your team, and so I do think there's a piece for me on that as well, or looking at people that are getting the roles and saying, right, what skills do I need to now get and how can I learn from that person?
Exactly. And that you've taken the words out of my mouth there. It's why did that person get the job over me? What were the skills that I need to improve on, whether that's technical, or soft skills or whatever, and how do it's that mindset shift of, right, if I want that role in the future, whether that's now 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, what makes them so good? Why did you give them the job? That's what I need to work towards, rather than, oh, I didn't get the job, I'm leaving, which is what a lot of people can do. Kind of rounds us off quite nicely because that's how we started the conversation around architecture. A good architect or great architect predominantly these days is around the softer skills and so on. That brings us to our quickfire questions, Rebecca. So they're quickfire questions. You don't have to answer them in a quickfire way, just honestly, I suppose. And so what do you expect in 2024 will be a game changer from a technology perspective, now that you are closer to the technology, I suppose?
So I think it's difficult I feel sorry for you because of when these podcasts are all being filmed, but it's difficult not to say Gen AI because it is just so massive over the last 10, 20 years. And I think, like for sort of any other business, it's massive when we're looking at it from our point of view, whether it's from a customer experience point of view and what we can do to improve the way we sell or serve, or also when you're talking about it from a colleague perspective and how we better give them the right information and help them. So I think that's massive for us, how we use it as technology. Also for Currys, it's massive just because Gen AI is now in all the products. So we've also got that lens, and we've probably not seen the same level of product cycle as when the tablet launched in 2010. Okay. So actually from a business perspective, we've not only we want to use it to see what we can do from a technology perspective, but actually it's about how do we then educate our customers on this new technology, because they're going to be using it. We're actually selling it to them, we're putting it in their hands. We know people are a bit nervous or apprehensive potentially about what Gen AI can do. So I also think we then have a duty to be thinking about how do we explain that to customers and help them through that transition period. So that for us as a business is massive on many, many fronts.
Okay. What advice would you give to newly appointed chief architect?
I love this question. So I guess two key things. I guess we are business leaders. Yeah. And I think for me, it is thinking with that business first lens. We're here to provide solutions, talk to the business and solve problems. So understand your business, get to know them. be the person in that room that knows just as much about your business as your commercial leader or your marketing director or your online director, so that when you're making your recommendations, you can explain to them why you're doing it. I'm doing it because it drives our category that makes the most margin forward. So that's a really big thing for me. And then also, I guess, be prepared to manage expectations or potentially say no. So there's loads of appetite for stuff. I think when you come into role, it's being able to, I guess, understand everything that's on your plate and where you think you can drive the most value. And then really having, I guess, those priority conversations with people around, oh, I'm doing this, so I can't look at that just yet, or I'm doing this. So making sure you set yourselves up for success, because I think once you start, I guess, showing you're adding value, more and more people want more from you, and you have to be a bit more laser focused.
Yeah, makes sense. Any advice, and I know we've covered quite a lot of this already, but any advice you'd wish you'd received earlier on in your career?
I guess the only thing we've not touched on is probably don't pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy early on in your career to be like, oh, I like this, I don't like this, or I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
And the one thing I think on reflection is that I've learned is that even if you don't think you're good at something, I guess maybe dealing with ambiguity, you may be very good logically putting structure, frameworks, and actually if you use those frameworks and that structure around your ambiguity, actually you can probably tackle it better than you think. And so we had a really good conversation with one of our grads last week about this, but I sort of like, don't tell yourself too much you can't do things, because actually as you grow and evolve, you probably can, just in a different way. The route you get from A to B is different. Or ask people for help and they can help you do it.
And that's the other thing, isn't
if it's not your bag.
Because ultimately, especially early on, it is just adding as many strings to the quality strings, that is, to your bow as possible. And then you can focus your career further down the line, I suppose. What's the hardest interview question you've ever had? Or given, by the way, where you've seen someone squirm in the other side of the table, and whether you enjoy it or not, I don't know. I won't ask you that.
I like this question. I guess the hardest one I've ever had was probably quite early on in my career when I moved into project management. I got asked about sort of a business case question. I got asked to estimate the size. Imagine it was 2000. There was the internet was just taking off, and estimate the business case for a children's clothing business between the age of 5 and 10.
Right.
And honestly, I don't think I'd done that sort of thing when I got given this question. And so to therefore think about the size of the population, number of children between that age bracket, share of online, all of that sort of stuff was sort of mind-blowing. But it actually, was a really good question because it shows how you think and you tackle, have literally been given no data, and what you do to think about how you get it. And shows your way you're thinking, and also then shows your ability to understand the world that we live in and how it works and find out information. And so I have then gone on to use that or similar questions, which I feel a bit mean about, but it was one of the hardest, but I think a really good skill set to be able to do. And actually that commercial acumen, even when you're hiring an enterprise architect, I think is super important to have.
Well, and from a talent perspective then, because that leads us quite nicely on, what's the biggest change you expect to see in the architecture market over the next 5 years?
Yeah, and I guess it probably is what we've been discussing, that sort of commercial acumen. So having a better understanding of what makes your business tick and why you're here, and your customers. Who is your end user, whether that be your contact center, your customers, really having that laser focus on them, because we know if we delight our customers, they're going to come back. And that's where we then make the money for the business. So it really is a win-win. So I think having that laser focus on something everyone understands, which is your customers or your end users, is super important. So I hope to see more CVs like that across my desk over the coming years.
Finding a way to articulate it on a CV, isn't it? So, well, sadly, Rebecca, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for an truly excellent podcast episode. It's been really interesting and great to chat about, architecture with a change mindset. So thanks once again, and more importantly for giving us your time today, because we all know how busy you are.
Pleasure. It's been really enjoyable. Thank you so much, Mario.
And that's a wrap. Sadly, we're at the end of another Transformational Blueprints episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and there were plenty of golden nuggets for you to take away. If you're a fan of the show, please do remember to share, like and leave reviews so that more people from our industry get to hear and benefit from these too. Please also follow Synactia Group on LinkedIn to keep up to date with new episodes. Links in the show notes. Join us next time for another episode packed with tips and advice from senior leaders in the technology world.